Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coach.Better from Maduro Learning. My name is Clint Hamada.
And my name is Kim Capino, and we'll be your hosts for today's episode. This week, we're chatting with Christina Botbyl, Director of Curriculum at the American International School of Kuwait. Christina offers us her perspective as a school administrator and shares some of the successful strategies to build a culture of coaching at AIS Kuwait, as well as how instructional coaching supports student learning through teacher development and growth. This was a really deep and thoughtful conversation about coaching with a school leader who is just as passionate about coaching as we are. Just a quick heads up that Clint joins us partway through the episode, so you're stuck with me for just the first half, and then all three of us finish out the conversation together.
If you enjoy any part of this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help us to know what you want to hear more about. Also, subscribe to the channel to see all of our coaching videos and click on the notification bell so you know as soon as each video is posted.
And please make sure to watch all the way to the end. We've got two great opportunities for your professional learning that we think you'll love. Let's get started. Christina, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience in leadership positions, where you work, your history in education?
Okay. My name is Christina Botbyl. I am currently the curriculum director at the American International School in Kuwait, where I have been, I've been at AIS since 2003 with a bit of a hiatus. My teaching background is, essentially I've taught in the K-12, along the K-12 continuum, but my areas are English and French. I've been in this position since 2011, and I guess I'll leave it at that if you want to know more.
Awesome. Sure. And we actually know each other for a little while because you did the very first cohort of the Coaching from Theory to Practice course through Aduro with all of your heads of departments, which was really cool.
Yeah, that was a very, I had done it maybe the year before that and had found it really motivational, inspirational. And all I could think of was like, okay, how do we get these ideas here on our campus? And somehow we managed to fund like 17 members of our leadership team to participate in that as a cohort. And you were open to that. It was an interesting experience, I think, for everyone. And that has been transformational in our developing our coaching culture here at AIS. It's been a bit of a long journey, but we're really starting to bear the fruits of the labor of people who aren't even with us at AIS anymore because they were part of that. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is pretty amazing.
So you're going to be a little bit of a expert in this, and I feel like it's unfair because you're going to be the administrator with the most expertise about coaching, I think, because you have so much insight into the whole coaching model at your school. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about coaching and really curious to hear what you think. So I'll start with the first question is, what do you think coaches do? How would you describe their role?
So in a very short, hopefully concise answer, it basically is what our coaching mission at AIS says. Coaches impact student learning through teacher practice.
Nice. That is a very clear and easy to understand.
There's a few more words in the mission statement, but that is ultimately student learning is at the center, and our coaches work with teachers to work on their practice, to develop areas in which they recognize, hopefully, that they need to grow in order to positively impact student learning in their classroom.
I have so many questions I want to ask about this. I'm going to try to stay focused. But when you said that bit about how teachers need to grow in order to impact student learning, this kind of gets at a later question I want to ask you about, but just because it's come up right now, how do you help those teachers on your staff feel that growth-mindedness in that they're recognizing that opportunity for professional growth and how that will impact student learning? Like, what do you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. we do a lot at AIS. We're very professional learning oriented. There's so many opportunities. We're an IB continuum school. We provide a lot of on-site training through our coordinators. We sometimes, depending on the year, bring trainers in. We always are and always have been a school that's striving to be something more than it is. So we always have a little bit exhausting sometimes, but we always have an initiative or 2 or 7 that we're working towards. So there is, maybe without saying we expect you to grow, there's a lot in what we do that hopefully encourages people to grow. How coaches play into that, it's looked different over the past few years. Like it kind of has a different look and a different feel depending on who's been in the positions, what the positions are supported and encouraged or allowed to do. I would say, I'll talk to this year in particular, we're only in week 2, but we really spent a lot of time over the last year and a half reflecting on what we were doing, what the coaches were doing, what they weren't doing, what we wanted it to be, what moves did we need to make in order to arrive at some of these kind of big, optimistic, idealistic ideas that we came to agreement on back in, I think it was 2015, when we were doing the Enduro Learning course. And so one of the things that we've started, it was a bit of an initiative in spring of last year with the admin coordinator coaching team, but in taking on instructional coaching, a bit of a reboot this year, one of the first things that I've started from day one with the coaching team is taking them out on learning walks. And the idea is that the coaching team is practicing their observational skills. We're just going into random classrooms for 5 minutes, 3 to 7 minutes at a time. Walking out, the learning all happens in the debrief. And then we're practicing giving feedback, specifically focusing on warm feedback. What did we notice? What did we see? What did we like? Those types of things. Like what we like based on what we saw. So that, like, I'm trying to get back around to the question, because that's one way that we help encourage teachers to see that what they are doing, that it's noticed, right? And appreciated what they're doing. And so right now, that's a huge piece of building the culture and setting trust with our teachers, so in hopes that in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, when things might not feel as fresh and new and exciting, and maybe we're not all as well planned, students maybe aren't, the honeymoon of the new school year has worn off essentially, and they're noticing a couple things they would like to tweak or improve upon. They've already seen that this is a positive relationship, and so they will find a coach to work on something with. I also have my coaches working a little bit through the modules from the Enduro Learning course, but the idea that, like, each week they're taking on a stage of the coaching cycle, just similar to the format that we did in the course. Because I'm not sure how well we've used coaching cycles as part of the work of instructional coaches. So that's also, I have 5 coaches and 4 of them are new to the positions this year. So there's a bit of onboarding that is also happening as well.
I love that one thing that you talked about, the learning walks, has positive impacts in so many different ways. Like it has a positive impact on the culture of teachers' perceptions of coaching because they see it as a positive opportunity for growth. It has positive impact on your coaching team because it's going to bring them together. It has positive impact on your coaching team because it's going to work on their observational skills like you're talking about. It has positive impacts on relationships between all of the, like that one thing is huge.
So it's amazing. And it's a bit of, it's definitely, it's an addictive habit because there are so many great things going on in classrooms. And when you're not in a classroom, you know, in a position like curriculum director, our program coordinators, our coaches, our librarian, well, librarians are a little different because they're actually teaching and interacting with students several times during the course of the day. You know, it's easy to forget about the great things going on in classrooms. So it's really addicting. And here's the other piece, like one of our focal points this year is feedback, providing feedback and taking action on feedback, specifically with students, but you know, we have to model it as well. And so what's funny is we've been writing feedback notes. We kind of put together, one of our coaches put together a thank you note with like, thanks for welcoming us in. We're practicing our observational skills. And then there's a space for us to write. So that's another opportunity to practice the warm feedback. It goes into their boxes, and the coaches are getting feedback on the feedback they're providing.
Oh my gosh.
And they are just like, that's kind of how we started out yesterday morning before our learning walks, was 3 different coaches sharing how the teachers were like, look what I got, right? And I put it on my board. I shared it with my students because that one in particular was about what we noticed students doing in the classroom. So I don't know, it gives me chills.
It just gave me goosebumps. Really like what a positive reinforcement cycle you're building there. I have one more question about this, and then I want to move on to the next question. But how much time out of your day would you say you spend doing learning walks? Because that, to me, seems like a huge positive outcome and also a huge amount of time. Not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah. No. So actually, we found last year when we had a team of, I think there were 16 of us, and we did a series of like 6 weeks. We divided up into triads. We rotated the triads every week. So we're going in groups of 3. So right now there are 5 coaches and me. We've got 2 triads, and we kind of plan ahead, and we go into 3 classrooms. You know, would we like to go into more? Yes. Is it reasonable? We could probably fit in 2 more. But right now we're finding that it's taking us about a half an hour walking around campus. We try to do an elementary, a middle, and a high. A couple of the teachers who have come into the instructional coaching position, because our instructional coaching positions are K-12 positions. They're not attached to a specific division. And so a couple of them have come from elementary, and so maybe middle and high school is a bit out of their comfort zone. So it's been very helpful for them to have a team to walk in with. I found that last year too when we first started. I needed someone to open the door those first couple times to walk into a classroom. And so that's also helped them very quickly recognize that, oh, I can do this. Yeah, the kids are bigger than what I'm used to, but you know, there's some really, one of the comments was, wow, that was grade 9. Look at how much more they're doing, how much deeper they're able to think or able to work than, you know, that elementary classroom. And it, you know, it's like, yeah, this is where they come eventually, right?
Yes.
So that is
like so amazing. And it's so clear that it's part of the culture of your school, that it's a bigger picture. It's not just 2 or 3 coaches trying to walk around and pop into people's classrooms. It's part of the culture of your school.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's like, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's something that has also had impact from the initiative in the spring, right? Like our administrators are also doing walkthroughs. Our coordinators as well. We have 3 program coordinators. And, you know, we have a team of administrators right now who understand that while they can support and encourage their staff, that in the end, they understand they're the evaluator, and that sometimes impacts what teachers are willing to share and work on with them. And wow, that having a whole admin team understand that and in support of the work we're doing,
that's amazing.
That's the reason it's happening. That's a huge part of the reason it's happening.
That's amazing. So that's one way that you work with coaches at your school. Are there other ways that you work with the coaches in your role?
Yes. So I'm also this year, this is a new responsibility for me. I'm their direct supervisor. So like I'm part of the team and I think that's working well, but I also have to kind of step back every now and then and recognize they need space to not have me around. But I've really focused during our orientation week and the whole month of September in like team building, setting agreements, like our learning walks are part of what I'm referring to as foundation time during the month of September. We spend 2 hours together every day. Do they really have the time for that? They're in high demand this year. So I am very grateful that they're coming, and I'm trying to take them through, I don't know, just professional learning, things that seem like will be helpful for them, maybe not right now today, but as time goes on. This week, for example, each day before a learning walk, I'm taking them through one of a different observation protocol from the National School Reform Faculty Critical Friends Group stuff, which is another thing I do. So that has been helpful for them because it gives them another lens as an observer, but it's also opening up ways in which they could invite teachers in their portfolio of their coaching portfolio to go on learning walks. Because that's the ultimate goal too, is that the coaches then begin to take teachers out on learning walks. We do a lot of goal setting. We will be goal setting. This week we have a longer period on Thursdays that is kind of longer goal setting. We need to do some work plan, strategic planning for, okay, you've got lots of people coming to you. You're working on, writer's workshop with grade 5, you've got grade 4 working with you, you're helping with guided reading. We've fully embraced Office 365 and Teams as our platform. So the tech coaches, it's a lot of building relationships and not saying no right now. So I see part of how I work with them as a way to help remind them that you have lots of projects and you need to manage these. So we've talked a lot, I'm a little bit addicted to productivity and project management platforms and systems. So I've kind of shared some of the different project management boards that I use. And so they have an idea of what they want theirs to look like. But I see that as being a huge piece of the work is planning
Absolutely.
and managing all of the things that they're doing, because I think it can be a little overwhelming.
I just want to say how lucky your coaches are. I have loved all the schools that I have worked at, and I have learned so much from them, but I don't think any of the schools that I've worked at have invested as heavily in coaching as what you're describing right now. Like, that sounds amazing.
It's a bit of a passion. Thank you. It's interesting because it makes me think of the article that you wrote a few years ago, which we looked at last week together. You Are What You Do.
Mm.
And it was really interesting, some of the feedback that the coaches shared about it. And it made me kind of, obviously reflect and think. And I'm not sure exactly when you originally wrote that, but I think instructional coaching, well, let's say like tech coach, literacy coach, math coach, has evolved since you've written that. And I don't know if it's evolved globally into this idea of instructional coaching, but that's what's happened here. So it isn't, no one's walking in without a job description, right? They have a job description. It's clear who's in charge of them, for lack of a better term. But who they report to, how we're kind of divvying up work and that sort of thing. Like, it's right now, it feels really good.
That's amazing. I think that post, I'm trying to remember when that post is from. I feel like 2007-ish, maybe 2007, 2008. And I think you're right that the roles have become more clear, but in certain schools and certain parts of the world, because there are people in my, the coach cohort now, and in my last cohort, where it's new to the school and they're struggling with like exactly the same thing. My administrator doesn't quite know what my job is. I don't quite know what my job is. Like, I have this idea of what I want it to be. The teachers have no idea, because the two of us who are the ones in charge don't know. So it's really interesting how you can see either in individual schools where they've made an investment in really building this up like yours, or regions where schools tend to be kind of similar. Like, I would say Asia, a lot of the schools in Asia are kind of moving at the same pace. Like, the similar size schools are kind of moving at the same pace. You can see the evolution, but it's I don't want to say few and far between, but it's definitely not global, I would say.
Yeah. It's, I mean, we've invested in it and we've stuck with it, right? I mean, I think there have been times over the past, I think this is the 7th year that we've had instructional coaching positions. I mean, I think there were times when, it was often called into question, like, do we need these positions? What do we do? What do they do? The eternal litany of questions, right?
Yes.
But they've always been part of kind of this K-12 team vision that we've had here at AIS that's really kind of all coming together this year. And there have been a couple of key people along the way who have worked here and helped to move it to this point who aren't here now, right? They've moved on. So it's a little bit bittersweet, because, they should also be here.
Yeah, to see
enjoying all of the positivity with it. But
so I want to ask you more about when you were debating about coaches, but I know it's a question that kind of comes along a little bit later. So I'm going to ask you the next question just to make it easy. It goes in the order of what we were originally thinking of. You work super closely with your coaches already, so I'm not even sure that how this will go, but what are some good opportunities for coaches to work with you? And in that sense, I'm thinking like to support you, to help you do your job better. Like, how can coaches work with you as a leader to make your job easier, more effective, whatever positive outcome?
So as a curriculum director, I see the K-12 team too as kind of a teaching and learning team. So some of the work that they do, or that I see them doing or hope that they're going to, and I know they're already doing it, right, is to support things like we have a movement kind of trying to shift to standards-based reporting, yet in line with our IB program. And so we have a couple of, not a couple, but like our coaches are pretty strong in understanding standards-based reporting. So one of the principals has called a meeting of the coaching team and me, and here's what we need from coaches. Can you help us? Right? So there's some leading professional development at staff meetings. There was a piece of, we kind of are looking for some mock-ups for some reports to share information, to report out to parents. Can you guys come up with something for us? That's one way that I see them helping me, and like as a principal to actually come to the team and say, here's kind of what we're wrestling with. We'd like some help from you. Here's what we think you could do. What else do you think? Does this sound interesting? Here are the dates. We need you to show up, ready to go.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's good. We also have had in the past, we're trying to move away from this a little bit, but I think it's inevitably it will come up, is the idea of a coach acting as a mentor for challenge. And that is when our principals have been in and out of classrooms, and they recognize that teacher X is really struggling. Often it tends to be classroom management, but sometimes instruction is related to that. But so we've had, that's kind of what happened last year with our instructional coaches, and we kind of we're hoping to break that cycle. I think we're on a good path. But the mentor for challenge piece and working with struggling teachers to help them feel supported in the areas that they need the support in hopes of, helping them to grow. I imagine that there will be some work in that area this year. I think our hope is that we're building relationships so that teachers might recognize for themselves. I think teachers always recognize where they would like to grow or where they need to grow, but they need that trust and that comfort level to be able to come to someone to feel vulnerable and say, listen, I need some help. So there's that piece, but then hopefully the relationships that we're building now will help those more difficult situations where an administrator is having that difficult conversation with a staff member that, you're not performing where we need you to in this area. Student learning is suffering as a result. We would like you to, it's not we would like you to, right? It's you
have the opportunity.
You can work on this with me, or you can work on this with me, and you can work with a coach. And hopefully that being a more positive experience, as opposed to you're not doing well, here's someone, and then a lot of pressure being put on the coach to, oh, well, this teacher isn't improving, guess your coaching isn't so great, right? So we're kind of hoping that plays out a little differently than it has in the past. But of course it will, because we've reflected, we have a plan in place, and we'll give it a go and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that will be really interesting, because one of the things when coaches get together and talk, one of the things we say we struggle with the most, and this really resonates with me, is people tend to think of coaching as something when you're doing something wrong, then you get a coach. And as coaches, we don't think that at all. We think we're there to help you meet your goals, to do the best you possibly can.
Do the fun stuff you want to get better at.
Exactly. In no way do we think of coaching as a punishment. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how this works in your school in particular, because you have such that strong cycle of positive feedback and that strong cycle of professional growth, or that strong culture of professional growth already happening. Like, that is a
I
great
think
way
so.
to make use of the coaches that you have.
And I mean, we have a high turnover rate, a higher turnover rate of teachers. So that the plus and the minus, the plus is that it's easier to start something new,
Sure.
right? But people come in from very different experiences. And one of the coaches was checking in with a new teacher in his portfolio, and kind of that first introduction, hi, I'm the coach. I've been assigned to, you're on my watch. I'll be checking in. What did I do? Who sent you?
Right.
Right. So the coach came back and was like, what do I do? And I'm like, you know what? You just continue, water on rock, just keep going, check in again, be supportive. It's okay. But it was just a good reminder for all of us that we do have people on staff who maybe have had some negative experiences with the whole idea of coaching. We had a teacher last year say, work with a coach. That must mean I'm on the way out the door, because in a district she came from, that was basically the last hurrah before you were exited from the building. So the struggle is real, and it's, trying to work with and encourage gently, or, putting that positive feedback in their mailbox after visiting their classroom to help change the narrative that
Absolutely
they know to be coaching.
And I think it's not easy work, and it's exactly like you say, the drop of water on the stone, because it's so easy to forget the baggage that teachers are coming with because of how things were implemented in other schools. And I was actually talking about this last night with the participants in the coach mentor group, and they were saying, like, I don't like the word coach. Like, I'm struggling it with myself because I have this perception of what a coach is from when I was a child and playing sports. And I don't think that's what we're talking about here. And I'm like, I know, like, there's no good word for this role because there is so much mental baggage that comes with it. It's not an easy thing to let yourself go.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's really important for coaching teams or coaches to define within their context what it is. But like I said, it's taken time to get here. So.
All right, we've got Clint in the call now. So Clint, we've just had like an amazing conversation about all of the ways that coaching works at AIS Kuwait, and we're just kind of halfway through the list of questions that I sent. So I think we can transition now and ask one of the next questions, which is, I know you don't have this problem, Christina, but what do you do when you don't have the opportunity to work with a coach? Like, as a leader, if you don't have coaches in your school, how do you get those things done that you mentioned coaches support you with already?
So that's an interesting question, because I've posed that to my coaches. Who coaches the coaches?
Yes. And
who coaches me? If I'm going to get really selfish and focus on myself. So I think when we had the cohort of leaders doing the Enduro Learning coaching course, the intention there was to build some capacity within our middle level leadership to have a better understanding of like a coaching conversation and a coaching cycle, so that it isn't just a coach or someone with coach in their title who you can go to. So I would say it's that, it's the teacher next door. It's the experienced department head, someone that you feel like, whether you teach with them on your team or you've heard them say some things in a staff meeting or professional development, and you're like, wow, that person sounds like they know something about what I want to be better at. And so it's just a matter of seeing anyone and everyone as a coach. And there are ways, I guess, to coach yourself, but that that isn't always helpful either. I mean, I think a lot of us, when we sit quietly and examine what we need to get better at, we probably have a pretty good idea of what that is. But the reason you're searching out a coach is because you've tried a couple of things and you're not quite feeling like you've made the progress that you would like to make. So, I mean, I think there's taking the course, doing the course that like you're doing. You've got kind of the mentor coaches. I think that's not exactly what you call them. But I mean, that was a really amazing opportunity to be coached without without working directly. It was an opportunity to do that. And I think there's a lot of online opportunities that maybe we're not tapping into for supporting each other and acting as coaches for each other, especially in an international setting, right? Like we don't, there aren't professionals in the next city over who are life coaches or, whatever other kinds of coaches you might need. So
I think what you're talking about highlights a couple of really valuable things. One is that growth mindset culture that you have instilled at your school, because seeing anyone and everyone as a coach and anyone and everyone having an opportunity to learn, to me, that's like growth mindset in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. And then the pointing out the bit about the importance of having that personal learning network or that connection of others, because you're right. I think most of us do know what our weaknesses are. But the reason they're weaknesses is because we don't know how to make them into strengths. We need someone else to help us do that. So having that network of people you can count on, or even if it's just one person that you can count on, I think it's so valuable. And I'm curious, from your perspective as a school leader, how hard is it for school leaders, school administrators to see the value in that like digital personal learning network? Because I find most of the school leaders that I have worked with, the first response would be, I don't have time for that. And the value is not there. It takes a long time to help build that understanding.
It's interesting because I would say I've seen mixed, right? Like I've seen some leaders and administrators who kind of embrace that like online network and see that. I mean, being a principal in an international school, depending on where you're located, being a superintendent, a curriculum director, it's very isolating. You're not working with a team of other curriculum directors, or, I mean, the principals are a little different because we have 3 divisions and then the assistant principals. I mean, you've got to model learning if you're a leader. You can't say, I don't have time for that, because I would say you don't have time to learn. You don't have time to be better. None of us are best yet. We're works in progress. That sounds really a little hippy dippy there, but it's true, right? Like, I mean, you got to make time. And honestly, I adhere to a lot of like, you don't have 15 minutes to learn something, because that's all it takes, or just to read an article that's going to either confirm something you already know or suspect, or help you think differently about maybe an issue that you're dealing with on your staff. You don't have 15 minutes to go on a learning walk with a colleague and come out and debrief and talk about, because that's the other thing that learning walks did. I feel like I'm like learning walks, is it provided a context for our leadership team to actually talk to each other about instruction. And we kind of realized as we would debrief at the end of each week that we hadn't really been doing that. You do that, but not in the same way. You kind of get focused on literacy, math scores, and not about like, what's happening, what is the student really doing in a classroom? So, I mean, I think there are ways you can work it into your day and it's still part of your job.
I think that would be such a valuable, like, whole other additional conversation coming from another school leader talking about the value of, because I think the challenge that most of the school leaders that I've talked to, they would argue that but I can't understand or build a network in Twitter in 15 minutes or whatever social networking tool it is. So it's like there's that initial output of time and energy that, you're right, is more work, but then the 15 minutes comes later. You can't get that 15 minutes of learning until.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And I mean, we're seeing that, as, like I mentioned, we've made a full transition to Office 365 and Teams. And like it's going well, and teachers, not all, but leaders and some teachers are taking that upfront time, which is really exciting. I think it's frustrating as well at moments. But like when you see them taking, and that's always the issue with switching platforms or introducing a new platform, is like, we didn't get PD on this. No one taught me how to do this. I get that, right? Because it does take the time and the willingness to just play around for many hours sometimes. So yeah.
One of the analogies that we've been talking about here is that our teachers are really time poor. And so they don't see the value in, the example that I gave is, when you're hungry, you're going to spend your money on food, even though, you should be investing for the future. When you're time poor, you're spending your time on the now, even though maybe cultivating that network or reading that article is really investing in your future and investing in your thought and your kind of deeper pedagogical understanding of what you're doing or why you're doing it. But I like that idea of how do you use your network as a coach rather than as a resource. I think a lot of times when you hear people talking about Twitter, it's like, oh, I'm looking for ideas to use this, or I'm looking for ideas for that, or does anybody have an article about this, which is great. They're my file retrieval system sometimes, but I think people have moved away from having those really deep conversations in some social network spaces. Maybe now it's more in closed spaces like a Facebook group or a private group or something like that. But I think having those deeper conversations about why I'm doing this or what could I have done differently, and building that trust online and having those that deeper coaching conversation is something that's really difficult to model. And just that concept of your network as your coach, I think when you said that, it kind of resonated with me and made me start thinking about how do I use my network? Is it as that file retrieval system, or is it to challenge my ideas, or to ask questions, or to have people ask me questions? And I'm just thinking it doesn't happen very often, but I would love it to, because the people that I'm connected to are so bloody smart.
Yeah, exactly.
And how do we build that culture?
Yeah. Well, I'll bring it back to one of Kim's Facebook groups, the Learning to Lift group, right? Like, and I'm in no way like going to imply that like I'm anywhere in her league. But the idea of, and watching different CrossFit people that I follow on Instagram, just posting that 3-minute video and saying, hey, what do you think? What did this look like? And people will give really good feedback, and they're kind, right? It's not like, wow, I don't know why you even tried to lift that bar, right? It's never anything like that. It's, genuine feedback. And when you're the person giving that feedback, watching that video closely, you're getting better. And that's the whole piece of coaching. It's that reciprocal learning. It isn't just about, I'm going to come help you get better, but through help, I'm getting better.
Absolutely.
Do you think you can do that in an educational setting though? Like going back to the lifting parallel, like I lift, it's one motion, it happens in 30 seconds, or I do repetitions and it happens in 3 minutes, and that's something that I can put into like a confined video. Yeah. I'm thinking about my classroom and what's going on in that classroom. I've got a 40-minute video that I would love for you to watch and give me feedback, which I would love to be able to do, but that is a much bigger commitment.
Yeah, for sure. I would say, it's like a learning walk. We walk in for 3 to 7 minutes. and we walk out and we debrief what we saw. You kind of have to make some guesses and some assumptions about what might have happened first. And the learning walk team is often wondering like, oh, I want to stay longer. I want to see what's going to happen next, right? But within that just short period of time, you can hone in on a teacher's questioning, their wait time, routines, building relationships. So I wonder if there are those learning walk snippets from a 40-minute lesson or presentation that you choose to share with someone and say, listen, these 3 minutes, I'm wondering, what are you noticing here? And actually, we can do that for ourselves too, right? Watching videos of ourselves, but nobody likes to do that. I don't think.
I think it's a good point, and I want to move on to the next question because I know everyone's time is limited, but I think it's a good point that while the physical act of lifting weights, let's say, it's easy to capture in a short moment, I think we forget how many little pieces make up one big classroom experience. And actually, it really is the culmination of so many different things. And if you have that one area you need help, like wait time, let's just say as a very simple, silly example, well, you can definitely see that in 3 minutes. And somebody can walk in and see 3 minutes if you waited at all for anyone, So I definitely think it's not like an immediate parallel, but I think if you look at the small pieces that make up the larger whole of one lesson or classroom energy, you can kind of break it down a little bit that way.
Because when someone wants to improve too, right? Oftentimes they want to say, I just want to get better. Well, you have to help them hone in on, okay, what do you think? Like, what is one thing we can focus on, right? And so sometimes you can see that one thing or a piece of something that leads to improving that one thing in that kind of snippet, especially if it's like, oh, actually I'm going to, I know that I'm going to do some questioning with students today, so I'll do a little recording and then I can maybe watch it for myself and then get some feedback.
All right, I'm going to move us on to the next question only because I know time is limited for everyone. And I also know that Christina is going to have a ton to share on this. And I think you already have shared a lot of things, so it might just be highlighting some pieces. But in your perspective, what are the essential elements for coaching to be successful in a school? What do you need to do as a school to build that coaching culture?
You need your admin and your leadership to be on board and supportive. And we have a superintendent who has been on coaching since we first brought it in. At that time, he was a principal, and it was a different cast of characters around the table. But he's supported that from the very beginning. And as we have also, I think there's a piece of communicating what is coaching, what do we mean when we say that? Again, having the privilege of having a large group of people in a cohort together, like that group together wrote kind of a coaching mission for our school, kind of did some future imagining and action planning. So we've had a shared vision and a plan moving forward, that's the project at the end, or it was the project at the end of the course. But then it's just a matter of working to make sure that your admin are supporting the work. And I would say, for me, that's probably one of my areas of growth, and that's kind of what I'm focused on this year personally, without a coach. But I often feel like it's a bit of it's political, and you need to kind of go around and kind of have all these extra conversations. And I guess we've kind of been doing that slowly, but we have a couple of different leadership teams. We have our administrative council, we have our curriculum council, and I have used that as a forum for constantly bringing it up, not constantly, but they might have felt like it was constant. Bringing it up as an agenda item we have a report system with a written report that here's what instructional coaching is, here's what we would like to do going forward next year, and bringing it to them, opening the floor for discussion, because listen, I'm open to a lot of other ideas, because if we're going to be collaborative, it's only going to become better. It doesn't have to be, well, this is what Christina thought was a good idea. And then involving everyone in that conversation and discussion, and then saying, everybody's on board? Yes, good. This is how we're moving forward next year. It probably is a little bit simplistic, but time and patience, admin on board, and I think, again, starting out with really positive interactions with teachers, building relationships.
Have you guys developed any kind of philosophy or kind of vision as to the purpose or the nature of coaching at your school to like really help solidify what you, all of those things that you've talked about, and like bring stakeholders in, and so that everybody feels like they have a voice in what this coaching role is?
I mean, we have a mission statement, and it's essentially, I don't think I have it memorized, that instructional coaches support student learning through teacher development and growth, something like that.
Right.
However, I'm starting to wonder if that's enough. And I'm kind of thinking that one of the steps that I need to take with the coaching team this year is to kind of flush out some belief or value statements from that. Because the thing is they do have job descriptions, which helps to define some of what they do. We shifted titles last year, and they all have the same title. They're instructional coach, but then there's a colon, technology integration, and then there's a colon, literacy/ELL, right? So they're definitely pulled in those directions, but there will come a time when it's kind of the general instructional. But we do, like Kim and I talked about this a little bit earlier, there is a focus on helping teachers to identify what they need to do to impact student learning, and how can the coach help them get better so that they can provide a learning environment that is more rich for their students.
So here's perhaps a negative question, but I think it's something that at least I as a coach wish that I could have asked or felt confident enough to ask my administrator. And the question is, where do coaches, or does coaching as a model fail, in your opinion, and what can we do about it?
Where does it fail? I think it has potential to fail when coaches are only seen as the people who can maybe come in and fix the struggling teacher, come in and be the fixer-upper, because it sends the wrong message about coaching. It's mentally exhausting for the coaches. And so they kind of get burnt out on the whole idea of coaching. I think sometimes tech coaches in particular can get caught up in I'm going to call it minutia of helping teachers use devices and platforms. However, I'm going to flip that because that's also how they build relationships. So, however, lots of howevers, I think if that becomes all that they do, that can be, they're not really coaching, right? They're helping, yes. And that's good, but you become the doer rather than the person supporting and encouraging growth.
Absolutely.
I don't have anything else that comes to mind. I mean, obviously, if you're in a really toxic environment where people are just against coaching and growth, but I think that's a special kind of place that hopefully doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I think you
like
hit on the head of two of the things that we as coaches often talk about. Go ahead, Clint.
I was just saying, I like that distinction of being the doer versus, I'm going to use the word, the empowerer, right? I think the coach is truly the one who empowers the teacher to be independent in that instance, whereas the facilitator or the integrationist, or like when that's your role, my job is to teach the kids and not really focus on changing the learning environment necessarily. And I think that's a really
We lost you for a second there. I think you just said that's a really good point.
Yes.
Awesome. So along those lines, Christina, what makes a coach invaluable to you as a leader? What is it that they do that makes them invaluable to you? I know you've said all the things that they do to support you in your role, but is there something, if you didn't have them, you would feel lost without them?
My team right now, they are out there doing it. And they don't need to be reminded that they should. They're excited, they're inspired, and they're out. Like, they all have a portfolio of new teachers, so that's kind of okay. Now you need to go meet them. You need to go make a connection with them, and they're all on it, and they're excited. They're like, I checked in with all of them. What should I do next, right? The literacy coaches are checking in with our elementary teachers, getting them started so that they can start the year, hit the ground running with guided reading, doing a little bit of a pilot with writer's workshop with a couple of the grade levels. The tech coaches are all over the place with helping, just literally, like physically all over the place, like helping new staff, really anticipating what teachers need, troubleshooting. They're a bit of a dream team, so they're pretty awesome right now. So, and they're doing all the stuff.
I think one of the things that you said in what you were describing, what you talked about was, there's a word for it and I can't think of it, like a go-getter, like somebody who doesn't need to be told every single thing that they need to do. They're passionate about their job. They just get on with it and go do it with that kind of, excitement and enthusiasm about the work that they have.
They don't need to wait to be asked or told, right? And that's important. They don't need to be managed, right? They're out doing what they need to do. When I find them in the office, they're working on how they're going to help, the team that they've just come from. They actually, one of the things that I think they do, that I see them doing already and that we talk about, is they provide a certain level of support for teams and teachers to help them work smarter, not harder. And it kind of goes back to what Clint was saying with being time poor. So, it's you're an MYP teacher? Well, okay, go read the subject guide. You need to do writer's workshop. Read this book, read the manual, because all the answers are in there. When? So one of the things, and this was actually something that we've all been reading through the Jim Knight instructional coaching manual. He doesn't call it a manual, but it is. And one of the things that he talks about that coaches can do, one, coaches need to become experts, right? So my literacy coaches, they need to become, I don't like to say they need to be experts because that's intimidating for some of them. You don't need to be an expert. You need to be knowledgeable about Writer's Workshop. So how are you going to become knowledgeable about Writer's Workshop? You're going to actually read the manual, and then what you're going to do is you're going to create the highlights for the teachers, the cliff notes of Writer's Workshop. What's the minimum they need to know from this manual so that they can get started and be successful and students can be involved in the writing process, becoming better writers? And so that's a bit of a monumental task. I'm watching one of the literacy coaches do that right now, and he's sitting in our learning commons with a big table and all the papers and the books spread out. But he's also made the comment, he said, I know this is going to help the teachers do it and do it better. He said, and I'm actually learning, I'm going deeper into my knowledge of what I already know. So that's another way that I think coaches help me and help admin and the other program coordinators, is finding ways to help our teachers work smarter and use their time to spend with students and focused on student learning. I mean, we need them to read the manual, let's be honest, but that's not the reality.
Right. You mentioned a couple of times that during your journey to the coaching kind of model that you have at the school now, there was not a lot, but there were times when the position was questioned. And I know that you have been a passionate advocate for coaching that entire time. So maybe this question isn't about you, but maybe in your experience with other leaders who have questioned, can you share an aha moment that either shifted your perspective from, thinking coaching maybe is valuable, being kind of meh about coaching, to being like a passionate advocate? Or is there a story that you have where you've shifted someone else's perspective? And what was that kind of aha moment or experience or story or whatever it is to kind of change someone's mind about coaching?
Let's see, I'm not sure I have a story here.
Okay.
I've been on board with coaching ever since it's funny because I was thinking about that question the last few days, like, how am I going to answer this? And then I started thinking about where did I even first hear about like instructional coaching? And the best I can come up with is that it's connected to like my professional learning network on Twitter, and it must be through like #EduCoach or probably Coattail, because I think I was maybe second online or first online cohort with that. And I mean, even though that like the focus is kind of that tech integration, there was still that coaching piece, and there were all the people in coaching positions who were part of that. So that kind of impacted the conversations and the stream that would come through my Twitter feed. I'm a national facilitator for NSRF, and I do critical friends group coaching training. Like that, I still remember taking that first, doing the training myself, like in 2013. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the Kool-Aid. I'm drinking it. So I just always been on board with coaching and passionate about it. And I think it's because like I love learning. So it's a natural fit. So yeah, it's a bit of a downer when people aren't into it.
Yes, it is.
But we've kind of, there've always been like a core group of people that people have left and joined and left and come in, but there's always been like a bit of a shared vision and okay, person X doesn't seem to be on board with what we're doing. person Y seems to really misunderstand the whole thing. So what are we going to do about it? Are we going to complain about it? Are we going to get negative about it? And sometimes the answer might be yes. But then it's like, okay, but we need to do something about it if it's that important to us. So again, I really like the analogy of water on rock to turn it into a smooth stone. It takes time and persistence. And I guess it's not really an aha moment, I guess, but it's just being persistent and going after what you believe is good or helpful.
I mean, I think that's the truth. Like, that's
yeah.
As like frustrating as it might be, I think that's it. Like, you just have to keep pushing. And I think one of the messages that I have taken away from all of this is that as a leader, either in a leadership position or as a coach, your passion for that model of professional growth is what's going to drive everything forward at the school. And really, one person can do so many different pieces of that pushing in so many different ways. Of course, you need other people to be on side, but it sounds like as one passionate person, you can start bringing those people on side and move the school forward.
Yeah. Funny, I don't think of that as me, but maybe it is. Maybe it has been.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Like, I took notes while we were talking because there was so much great stuff in there. And I want to make sure not only are there some show notes, but like if there's anything we want to dive into deeper, that I can come back to you. We can come back to you and maybe even ask some more questions, because that was awesome. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Always happy to talk about coaching.
Yes.
Thanks, Christina.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for watching our video today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll know when we release a new video each week. At Aduro Learning, as you know, we want to help you coach better. To get you started, we've got a free digital download for you called 5 Strategies for Your Coaching Toolkit right in the description box below. And if you're looking for even more, we now offer private coaching sessions to help you work through any specific issue you might be having as a coach or even just as an educator. Do you have a problem you can't seem to solve? Get your introductory private coaching session for free with us. Learn more at adurolearning.com/private coaching. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.